How's it going, everybody? So today what I'm going to be going through in this video is taking that last video to the next level, and it's okay if you didn't see the last one. I'll give you a brief overview of what I covered in that video. What I'm going to be doing is mapping out all of the automations around the CRM and the CMS side of my business. So CRM meaning Customer Relationship Manager, which for me is primarily getting customers into the business. And then the second half of it is going to be managing the customers that are inside the business. So if you haven't met me before, my name is Ben Green and I'm the owner of Optimizeis. And what we do is we help businesses build very similar systems to this one to manage their customers more efficiently, especially for online digital businesses. We help you optimize all of your digital systems and your processes on your team to make the best use of your time. Without further ado, I'm going to jump into this video and go through some of the automations that I'm going to use to make a central business hub out of my business and using Airtable. So I'm going to just shrink myself down right here. So I'm going to be down here in the bottom left corner right here. And this is what we went through in the last video. So these are the different tables in Airtable that we created. I didn't add a ton of different fields in here because we don't need to at this stage. Maybe once we get into the actual building, we can start defining more of those, although there are like some roll-ups, some fields in general. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to tackle are at least all of the ones that I can think of for the CRM. So the CRM consists of companies, contacts, invoices, toggle, and CRM activities. So this will be perfect. Just a brief overview of how this works. One company has many contacts. One contact probably has many CRM activities. CRM activity could be an email, a consultation, like I have Zoom consultations to start off anything with any client. Other things could be emails that go out of Convertkit. If I picked up the phone and called them, if I saw somebody at a coffee shop and added them, that would be a CRM activity. Companies have time tracked on them, so I do a lot of time-based projects, and even if I don't do a time-based project, I still want to know what is the return on the investment, how much time did I put into that project, or how much time did people on my team put into that project, and how does that translate to an hourly rate per se. And then companies also have invoices and payments. So this is the extent that I'm going to take this. This is as far as just getting customers. These are things that we're tracking. All right, so I'm going to use this color for these automations. So I'm just going to make these very simple. I'm going to start with new contacts being added. Now I just did a video where I'm going to walk you through how to do the one that I'm about to describe. And I'll actually show you later at the end of this video how you can get access to that training. So this first one is going to be Calendly to Airtable. So right here, and primarily all of this you're going to be able to do with Zapier. So for Zapier, we're going to say Calendly invitee created. That is the first way that someone is going to be able to enter our system. And we're talking about prospecting here. So this is before they would pay me any money. I need to get people in here first. And so for me, the only real way is like if you look in the description of this video, there's a link there. You can request a consultation with me or someone on my team. And that's really the only way that people can work with us is by going through that link and booking a call with someone on my team. And so we have Calendly invitee created. Now what do we want to do from that is we want to take that to the next step. And so that's what's known as a trigger. And then the next step is going to be what's known as an action. So this is going to be find or create a company, and this company could already exist. So somebody could have had a call months ago and they're booking back in because they're ready to start now and they want to get on a similar call that we had the first time. That's totally okay. Now this next one is going to be very similar, but it's going to be find or create a contact. So those are the three that I would do from Calendly. And sometimes what I would do if we have like a prospect communication log is we would say that the Calendly event was booked. The reason why I do this is because not all the time, like sometimes the event gets canceled, in which I wouldn't have a recap of that, but they still booked it. So they still set that intention, and I would want to capture that in my CRM. So these are just some of the things that I would be tracking in my CRM in Airtable. So that's going to be the first set of automations in the CRM. All right, so now we have companies, contacts, and CRM activities added. Now the only real other way is and this doesn't happen very often, but it's nice, especially for the people for follow-up, especially, but also some people get added in this way. So this one is going to be new email in my inbox. So this is going to be a new email in my email. You can probably find it on the website, but if somebody were to email me, I would most likely be directing them to this Calendly event so that they go through the system properly, just like every other client does. But sometimes I'll get a new email, and then what I want to do is I want to find, create. It's going to basically be all these same things. So it's going to go find and create a company. And how I differentiate that with emails is sometimes if it's like at Gmail, I'll just create a new company no matter what. But if they have anything other than like, there's like 7 or 8 common email domains that are like Gmail, Yahoo, those, if they have a custom domain, then I will add the business name as the custom domain. So I'm going to get into that in a later video of how exactly to do that and how to exactly pull out that custom domain and create a new company. But for now, you'll just have to trust me on that. A new email comes in, find or create a company, find or create a contact, and then log the event. So log record in CRM communications. And for this one, we're going to say new Calendly booking. So one thing that I would like to make a distinction on, and it makes the workflow for both of these apps very easy, is I would differentiate here inbound versus outbound. And I actually wouldn't do that here. Where I would actually do this is, and this is if you're on the paid version of Zapier, I think it's like $40 a month to have access to this. Don't quote me on that. Maybe it's $50, depending on where you're at. Right now I have this set up in 2 different Zaps, but with the way that I intend on having this happen is it will be in the same Zap, because when I first set this up, I didn't have access to this feature. So I do this separately for inbound versus outbound. And the reason why is because, and I also have a filter. So we're going to copy both these and paste them over here. And both of these are going to be new email. So let's change both of these, new email. And then both of these are a filter. So before I had the $50 plan on Zapier, I had to do it this way, but now I will just use a path and use a single trigger. So with the path, I would basically be able to do this, where it sends it on a path based on my email being in either the to or the from, and that's how I differentiate those. So if you think about it, if I send an email, my email is going to be in the from, but if I receive an email, my email would be in the to. So that is how I differentiate those. All right, so now we have customers in here. And now that I'm thinking about this, one thing that I forgot to do is in this Calendly invitee created, one thing that I do is sometimes, actually nearly all the time, at the end of an audit call, if somebody's ready to move forward, I will send them an invoice or just collect payment on the call. So Calendly invitee created, I want to go create a Stripe, create customer. So the reason why I want to do this at the beginning is because then when I go and create that customer for that company right here, then I want to add Stripe ID. And I suppose now that I'm thinking about this, if the company already exists, I would want to wait. So maybe what I would do is I would take that out of there. Now that I think about what's the best way to do this, is I would wait till I know if there's a company or not. And then what I would have to do is I would probably just, instead of doing all of that, wait to do that till all the way at the end, and I'll show you why. The benefit of waiting to do this all the way at the end is now I can add a filter in here. So I'll add another step in here that's a filter. The customer did not exist. And then Stripe, create customer, and then update customer record and company. So these are the automations that I would have because I don't want to create duplicate customers. For example, maybe somebody was a client like 2 years ago and they booked one of these calls. They already exist in Stripe. I've already collected payment from them, or maybe they booked a call 6 months ago and they were added to Stripe. I just don't want to make Stripe too messy. But right here, I would then not be adding it until the end. And we would say with Stripe ID. All right. So far, these are 3 automations that I would be adding to this. So that gets customers in here. And that also logs communication for me. So it logs new emails and it logs new events created. All right, so now another thing before I get to toggle and invoices, because both of those are primarily for after payment, but it's still part of the CRM deal because it's as they're becoming client. That's really what the turning point is for me. So the next thing that I would want to do is log certain interactions. And so what I do on every single audit call that I have is I'm getting Zoom to record those calls in the future. But right now I have a form that I fill out and update. And so it updates their status. I put in a few notes from the call. It's like an audit call recap. I actually included that right here, audit call recap. So that audit call recap needs to update the status of the company in my system. Do they need follow-up? Am I waiting on info from them? Basically, my stages are pre-consultation, so before this call. Then after that call happens, I fill out a form and I say, am I waiting on info from you, or are you waiting on info from me? And then in that audit call recap, that will update that status. Or are you closed won or closed lost? So like if I don't think we're a good fit to work together, you just go into closed lost. And it's essentially like purgatory. Like I'd never mess with those leads really ever if I don't think it's a good fit. But if I'm waiting on info from you, I know it's not urgent for me until there's a delay timer. So let's get into some of those. So what I mentioned there was I'm just going to copy a few of these. So what I have is a new audit call recap form. So new audit call recap form, and then it's going to update the status of the company record to whatever the status is that I picked here. And it will also update any other, actually no, this should all be in the same automation. So update the company record and other fields. So for example, in my Calendly form, so if I come up here and go to schedule page, in my Calendly form, I ask for the time and I ask a few questions. One of the questions that I don't ask is what's the name of your business. I ask for the website right here, but not the name of the business. So one of the questions that I do ask in the audit call recap form is if the client or if that prospect is moving to be a customer, what's the name of their business? And so the reason why I ask that is because I want to go update the name of their business. That way when I onboard them, then it will add the name of their business to the name of the Stripe channel. It will add the name of their business to my toggle, which is my time tracking tool. You can see I'm tracking my time right now. And it's also going to update the status. It's actually not going to update their name in Stripe. I think that's pretty much it. That's all that really matters right now. So those are the other fields that I'm talking about there. Now, another thing that happens from that is let's filter. So there's going to be one filter on this, and it's going to be if no-show. So if there was a no-show, then what I automatically do is send an email. Send follow-up email. And what that follow-up email basically looks like, it's like, hey, sorry we missed each other today. You wanted to talk about this, which is the pain or goal that you talk about in here. So it's what's your biggest obstacle? So, hey, I was hoping to solve this for you in this call today. If you meant to book the call or you meant to show up, no worries at all. Here's a link to rebook the call. And it doesn't ask all these questions. It's very simple. But that automatically goes out if they no-show. Now, another thing that happens is, let me add a few of these. So if the client moves to an awaiting follow-up, I don't do any proposals per se, but what I do is if the audit call recap form contains needs follow-up, it will go into Gmail, create draft email. So what that draft email looks like is I have the same proposal. It basically puts all the words in there for me. It has case studies linked in there. It has my process that I go through. For example, that email is going to contain which I go through this in every audit call, but it's going to have all of the details of my process that I walk the client through or walk the prospect through on that first call. And it goes through all of this. So that's what's included in that draft email right there. So that way I can just go into my drafts like every other day or so and knock out all of my people that I need to get emails out to. And ideally someday, like I would be delegating that to an executive assistant or somebody or a sales director who could be taking these calls as well. But right now I'm fine just sending out these templated emails. I basically just change the topic of what we talked about, and everything else can pretty much stay the same because I follow the same structure for every single client. Every single client interaction is nearly identical. All right, so now a few other things that we need to add to this. So I could add similar things for texting and phone calls if I was using a texting or phone calling system. I personally am not, so I'm not going to include those in this system. So the next things that I'm going to be adding in here are Convertkit. So when a calendar invitee is created, another thing that I would want to do right in here, and for lack of a better space to put this, I'm just going to add this before the filter. So here I am, before this next step, I'm also going to add to Convertkit. So I'm going to add them to Convertkit and subscribed. That way, as I send out any email newsletters, they will get those and stay up to date. All right. So another thing that I will be wanting to add is for people who showed up to the call and they didn't close, is add them to a new Convertkit automation. Now, what I'm not going to go through in this video is my Convertkit automations, but basically those are just sending an email. You subscribe somebody to an automation, and it's going to send them an email every 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, whatever it is of your choosing. For me, I think it starts off quicker in the beginning and then it slows off, and it usually lasts around 45 or 50 days. My particular email campaign, yours could be way different. So for me, we will have a trigger Airtable view. And that Airtable view needs to say that prospect is in needs follow-up or awaiting info, or basically anything but closed and I have a rotting time on each prospect, and they've been rotting in not closed one for more than, let's say, 30 days. So prospect not in closed one for more than 30 days, and I never said they're a bad fit, so they can't go into the closed lost, like bad fit category. Not closed, lost, bad fit. And we are going to subscribe them to a long-term follow-up sequence in Convertkit. Subscribe to long-term follow-up in Convertkit. So how this looks in Convertkit, and to not make it too cluttered up here, I'm just going to add this here. So it will most likely be find or create subscriber, and probably add tag, or actually we can just look it up. So let's look up Convertkit Zapier. And this is how I look up any automations if I'm curious on what that app can do. I just look this up and then scroll down here to these right here. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to say find subscriber, and then other actions that I can do is, usually this says like optionally create a subscriber, so that may be there unless I'm missing the action create subscriber. I'm guessing it's in find subscriber, and then add subscriber to sequence, or add subscriber to a form, or add tag to a subscriber. So what I'm going to be doing here is adding the subscriber to a sequence. Subscribe to long-term follow-up in Convertkit sequence. So that's going to be the next task in here. And that will take care of some of my follow-up. I won't have to do as much follow-up because this will take a lot less of me than either delegating this or doing this manually myself. Although for certain people, I will do manual follow-ups if I really want to work with them. But for the vast majority of people, this will at least keep me top of mind, because a lot of people, they might not be ready today, but it might be like 6 months from now or a year from now that they're like, oh, I could really work with Ben and his team and really improve my digital processes. So that's kind of the idea of the long-term follow-up. Is I can't know exactly when they're going to need my help, but they will. So as long as I can keep them top of mind, that will do the trick. All right, so now the next step is let's get into onboarding and invoices and payments. And because I'm already this far in the video, I'm going to save these automations for the CMS for the next video, mapping out those. This one's just going to be for the CRM and onboarding. So after onboarding, then we're going to take it to the next level, and I'm going to show you what I can do with all of these automations in actually managing the clients. But for this one, it's just going to be here in Airtable. And again, I am going to get you access to this training that I made on building out this first Calendly integration with Airtable or with your CRM. So stay tuned for that at the end of the video. All right. So now there's 3 other automations that we need to add, and I'm going to actually maybe 4 automations that we need to add. And the first one is going to be onboarding. And I'm going to change these to the trigger, but just so I stay organized here for these next few. The first one's going to be onboarding. The next one after that is going to be new invoice. The next one after that is going to be new payment. And the one after new payment is going to be new time tracked, new time entry. All right. So these are our final 4 automations, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do all of this in Airtable. I'm going to show you how exactly I set up all of these automations to work perfectly with the Airtable system. All right. So now what I'm going to do, and actually there is one more that I'm adding. So I don't have this one yet, but this is something that I'm adding, and I'm going to go to this one at the end of this video. And this one is going to be new Zoom. I'm going to talk about what new Zoom means at the end of the video. All right. So onboarding. What happens when onboarding, and more importantly, how do I onboard somebody? So there's one method that I used when I first started, and it was just mark somebody as closed won. But onboarding is an active process for me. I don't want to wait 5 minutes for Zapier to recognize that somebody moved into a view and now I'm onboarding them, because it's a lot of times it's like on the call. I don't want to jump into Zapier and manually trigger the Zap either. So I was like, how can I create a really efficient onboarding system that does everything that I need it to do? So for onboarding, what I'm going to be doing here is onboarding is going to get triggered. We're going to align these perfectly. All right, so onboarding is going to get triggered by a new webhook in Zapier. So a webhook is basically just like you open a web page, just like I open this web page, except it's going to be like a blank web page, and it's just going to be for the purposes of triggering Zapier. So a new webhook in Zapier is caught, for lack of a better word. And what that's going to do is that's going to be the trigger. Now onboarding is going to happen all by itself. So the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to create a contract in e-signatures. And now that I think about it, I'm going to need one more automation for when the contract is signed. So I will add this to the top as well. So new contract signed by all signers in e-signatures. All right, so talking about onboarding. Onboarding for me could look differently than onboarding for you, but generally whenever you're tracking hours, you need to have a really good system around tracking hours. Like for example, here I'm doing work for Optimizeis. I'm working on marketing. Other times I'm working in service delivery for clients, and so I want to track that time too. So the first thing that's going to happen is a new webhook in Zapier. It's going to create a contract in e-signatures, and it's actually going to send to them, and e-signatures takes care of all of my follow-up for my given amount of time that I want to do follow-up on contracts. It's beautiful. The next thing I want to do is let's go search real fast for Zapier toggle. I don't think they have a finder create. I think right now I just go create a project or create a client in toggle. So what I want to do is create a client and then create a project. Yeah. So create a client and create a project. That's going to be my first action right here. So create client and create project. That way I can start tracking time on them. All right, so create client in toggle, and then create project in toggle. And one of the biggest benefits for this is the benefits of an onboarding automation is not always just for the speed that it saves in onboarding. One of the most beneficial reasons for using an onboarding automation is professionalism. So, and appearance on that call, on that audit call. If you can onboard somebody and it takes you 3 seconds to do, and now all of a sudden they have an email in their Gmail with all of the onboarding instructions, they have an invite to a Slack channel in there. They can join the Slack channel. It has instructions on how to get onboarded. They get a contract sent to them automatically. And for me, I do Stripe invoicing separately, but that's really powerful. So how I do onboarding is they get a contract in e-signatures. They get a client created for them in toggle. They get a project created for them in toggle. And then the last thing is it's going to create a Slack channel for them. And fortunately, I'm going to have to go up here. So it's going to create a Slack channel for them. And then the last thing that it's going to do is it's going to create or send a message in that Slack channel. Now, the only unfortunate part about this that can't be automated is I would love to create a private channel in Slack, but unfortunately that just cannot be done. And then I also manually invite them to Slack. So it takes care of everything aside from just updating that Slack channel to be private. That way none of my other clients can join that client's Slack channel. And then I also need to manually invite them. So I just haven't really dug into a lot of other ways of doing that. But as far as I'm concerned, that's probably the fastest way of doing it for me right now. All right, let's jump into the next one, a new invoice. So what happens when there's a new invoice? Let's go over and look at our ERD. So a new invoice, what's really nice about this is we already have Stripe connected to Airtable from them booking the audit call. So they already have a contact in Stripe. So that's really useful for us as far as using Stripe IDs. So what I want to do is I want to go find or create a company to link it to and then create an invoice. For invoices, I just create them right away. But one unfortunate thing about invoices is what I'm going to show you in a second about payments. All right, so for a new invoice, what I want to do is find, create company, and then create invoice. Now what invoices are, they are not paid yet. So invoices are different than payments. They just get logged in there. Now, the unfortunate part about this is Zapier, I believe, checks at whatever frequency they do on your account. So for a new invoice for me, they used to check every 15 minutes on the $20 per month Zapier plan. So checks every 15 minutes. With new payments, those are instant in Zapier. And that's, again, from my recollection, they were instant for me always doing this. So a lot of times what would happen is I'd send the client an invoice and I would create an invoice and send it to the client and they would pay within 5 minutes. So what you have happen here is the invoice gets created before the payment happens. That's a problem because we want to update the invoice that should already exist. We also don't want to then create a duplicate invoice later on. So when I was on the $20 per month Zapier plan, I had it wait 16 minutes. And actually I add a caveat to this because I would have it send a message in Slack because I don't have notifications on my phone for Stripe. So it sends a message in Slack, then waits 16 minutes. And then what it's going to do is it's going to find invoice. And then it's going to update the invoice as paid with all of the terms that how much they paid, how much fees we paid for that invoice to be used in Stripe. Update invoice as paid. And the reason why I like using Slack for all notifications like that is because it just keeps it all in one place. I don't like to get distracted on my phone with a lot of different things. And Stripe just works really, or Slack just really works well for that. All right. So the next thing is going to be a new time entry. How is that going to work? And this should work. Those invoices should work perfectly with our Airtable setup. So if we remember this, the company is created in Stripe, so we don't have to create that company on the sales call. And then on the sales call, we can just go to that magic link that opens up the customer in Stripe. We can send them an invoice, and they're taken care of there, and then hit the onboarding button. And that's all we need to do for onboarding. Then once they pay, it's going to send a message in Slack saying, hey, congrats, you've got a new payment. And then it's going to wait 16 minutes, and then it's going to find and update that invoice. That way our revenue tracking in Airtable with these invoices and payments, that all gets done beautifully. All right, so the next thing that we're going to be tracking is Toggle. And I guess let's take a step back and go 1 second on the invoices. So all of my invoices are thankfully one-liners, like they only have one line item. And what a line item is if you go to the grocery store, maybe you buy 2 tomatoes and you buy 3 bananas or 2 pounds of bananas, and you buy 2 pounds of hamburger. Well, those are 3 different line items I think I listed off. For me, it's always just like maybe you pay a retainer or maybe you pay a block of hours. So it works beautifully for a block of hours to use quantity as like say 10 hours. And then the hourly rate, say it's $250. So it's 10 hours at $250, that's $2,500. And so that works beautifully with the time tracking system, because what I can pull in is that line item. So I can say, find or create the company and create invoice and add QTY for the quantity that was included on that invoice. And then on the invoice, I have the quantity. And this really works well because I only have that one line item, like I said. So then on the company, I can total what's the total quantity of their invoice line items. And then that would be the total quantity of hours that they bought. And now I'm going to show you how that works with Toggle. So on the company, I know how many hours they bought. In Toggle, I know how many hours have been used. So that's how I do all of these roll-ups. It's really with these 2 automations save me an enormous amount of time. It's a very nice system. All right, so new time entry, what happens here? So new time entry and Toggle. What I want to do is I want to go find the customer or company and then create a time entry. So new time entry in Toggle. I'm going to add a little caveat to this. In Toggle, find the company and create a time entry. So that's all that I have to do there. And now this will be tracking time. And I didn't go into all the fields that I'll be adding here, but it's going to map all of those fields in there. All right, so now the next thing that I want to be tracking, and this is new to me, are new Zoom meetings. So not just new Zoom meetings, but I have a few ideas for these. I haven't fleshed any of these out, but these are my ideas for how I want to handle new Zoom meetings. So the first thing that I want to do is upload to Google Drive. Now I already am not sure that this is possible because of how big Zoom files are. So that one's going to be a big caveat. So I'm going to take that one and put it second. So the first thing that I'm going to do is find Google Calendar event. And the reason for doing that is because I want to know who attended that event. That way I can use this data in my CRM and I can connect that Zoom meeting to contacts in my CRM. So if I can do that, then I want to upload to Google Drive. And these should be in the right order, but it doesn't have to be in this exact order. These could really go a few different ways. Another thing that I want to do is upload to Trint. So what Trint does is it does transcribing. So you can upload a video and they have, if I search for Trint Zapier, you should be able to upload as an action, upload file. So I don't know if there's a limit to the size of that file, but what I would love to see is upload to Trint. So upload file. And then create a communication communication record in Airtable. And this should also be available to the client, which is pretty nice, I think. So then they can see a transcription of their meeting with me. And especially at the end of every single call, I add in all of my takeaways from the call and all of my next steps for both the client and myself. So those will very easily be able to be pulled now rather than rewatching a video. So that is the next step in here. Now, my last step is new contract signed by all signers and e-signatures. Now, this one's really important. Again, I am going to get in a second to this the Calendly, the walkthrough of how to use Calendly. I'm going to show you right at the end how to do that and how to get access to that training. But this new contract signed by all signers and e-signatures, what's really important is actually what you do when you send that e-signature. So for this onboarding right here, we hit the webhook, which opens a URL. And again, I'm going to show you exactly how to set that up. But the first thing that it's going to do is create a contract in esignatures.io. And one of the things that you can add is a piece of metadata, which actually reminds me, if we go back to this onboarding, what I have it do is all I send to the webhook, and I could be doing this completely wrong, all I send is the record ID. So it's update Airtable record. So I go update the contact just so I can pull all the information from it. I don't actually update anything on it, but in the course of updating a record, you get all of every single field value of that record. So when you go create the contract in e-signatures, what I add is a piece of metadata. And metadata doesn't get shared with the client as they're signing the e-signature, but it's like underneath the document. It basically has the record ID of whatever client I onboarded. And that way, when the client is signed by all signers, then what it's going to go do is it's going to update record in Airtable and upload the document to Airtable. And that's going to be perfect because it's going to have all of the information about when they signed, when every single person signed. It's going to be beautiful, and it will just be able to update that record with the piece of metadata from the Airtable record. All right, so we got quite a long list here of all of these automations that we're going to add to the CRM to make it work really well. And I might add some as I go, but as an initial start, this is going to be perfect for what I need to work as far as on the CRM side. So if you have any questions, throw them down in the comments. But now what I've been promising the whole video is anything around the Calendly setup. So if you're interested in setting up Calendly to do all this, which I think is the most important part in a sales CRM, is just getting the leads in here. It's this automation right here. Create Calendly invitee created, go create a company, contact, and then log that in your communication log. If you check out the video on the end screen right here, it's going to walk you through exactly how to set that up. We've walked many of our clients through the same thing. It's actually the same process we follow when you book a call in the description. If you wanted to work with us, that's how you would do it. But in that video right there, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to take that audit call or take that sales call and map it in, create a company. If they do not exist, create a contact. If they do not exist, and then create an opportunity. And if you have an opportunities table in your CRM, if that does not exist. So go check out that video right there if you want to see how to do that flow. And otherwise, make sure you look at the playlist, because in the playlist for this, I'm going to be going through the next set of these automations. So if you want to get some tangible feedback on this and just implement really fast, I would go watch the Calendly, but otherwise go watch the rest of this playlist. So I'll see you in that video right there in the end screen. Go click the video right there. I'll see ya.